welcome back to another episode of Perkins Pipes. We've got the little bent prince that I made as our pipe for the day. And we're going to be talking about books again. So let's get this guy fired up and we'll get to talking. So when I had done the videos before about the books that I had written for my children, several people put comments, shared comments, both on the channel here and on Pipe Cottage Social about others that I'd written that they wanted to hear more about. And by the way, I just love that so much. I love the comments from everybody. I love talking with people. So we certainly invite you to subscribe to the channel. I would love you to click subscribe. It's just a fun and growing community here, part of the YouTube Pipe community. So there's a fellow named Suddy on Pipe Cottage Social. And I joked with him once before. I said, I think we're brothers from other mothers. We share a lot of interests. And so two that he wanted to hear more about were one I'd written for my daughter. And one I'd written for my son. So the one for my daughter is called The Prophecy. And is sci-fi. And it had to do with the fact that at the time, she had just, in the previous year, she had been to space camp down in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a marvelous program for young people. Highly encourage that. For anybody who's thinking about that, just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So she was really into space. Matter of fact, she's at Purdue now as a freshman. She's majoring in chemistry, and if she had her druthers, I think she would like eventually to work for NASA or SpaceX or something like that. So let me tell you a little bit about this book. I will read to you the beginning and then share some thoughts about it, and then I'll share a little bit more of a book that I wrote my son. So this is chapter 1 of The Prophecy. There are many stories I could tell you. I have, after all, traveled a fair bit in my day, and my day is hardly over, mind you, but I do think it a pleasure to recall some of the adventures of my youth. And since you seem eager to hear a good story, I'm more than happy to tell you one. The problem, as I say, that there are so many from which to choose. We could go all the way back to the beginning, when I was but a girl your age. But I imagine that my adventures then were not that much different, at least in their spirit, than yours are. And who really wants to hear a story about something they already know? It is true the details of my youth are likely different from yours. I did grow up in a time of dragons. I also grew up rather far from where you live. It was on another planet, actually. And I could fly. But other than that, I suppose the tales of my youth would be remarkably like yours. I mean, who hasn't grown up as the heir to the throne of a galactic empire, threatened by monstrous forces outside their people and one monstrous force from within, all while navigating the even greater challenges of being young? So the story is of a young woman whose name is Lavalia, and as the opening paragraph says, she's the daughter of a galactic emperor and slated to take over, but various things try to thwart her. And she has to deal with those, all while dealing with the challenges of growing up. Now, I always put some notes in the back of the books for my children. And I pointed out in the back, I said to her that, I wrote this based on her interest in space and having gone to space camp. Now, a couple of little details I put in. I said the titles of the leaders in this book are Duskvir and Duskfamen, completely made up words. And I said they have a hidden Latin root. In the classic poem Aeneid by the Roman poet Virgil, there's a queen who leads her people to establish a new kingdom. Her name is Dido. And in Aeneid, Book 1, line 364, Virgil has the line about this woman, Dido, Dux Femina Facti. The leader of the deed was a woman. So I took the sound of Dux Famen and turned that into Duskfamen as a title, and Duskvir, which is a play on Latin words meaning the man who is a leader. So I like to bring in little details like that. The thing I'm most interested in, though, is the fact that my son got into the act and helping me to write this. So I'm going to bring a picture up here that my son drew. I wrote in the back of my daughter's book, finally, and this is very important, Austin had a hand in writing this book. When I was working on the another version of it, I realized I needed to picture the spaceship so I could have the characters interact appropriately. In other words, I needed a stage for the actors in my book. Knowing Austin's ability to build things, I asked him to design a spaceship for me. I told him a few of the things I wanted in it, and then left him alone. He was so excited to be part of your book, and very quickly came up with just what I needed. Although I ended up going in a different direction with the book that I did write, I chose to include his design in my thoughts for the ship that Lavalia's family takes around the empire. Here is the design your brother created. When it comes to fiction, I'm a very physical writer. What I mean by that is I have to almost physically embody or even sometimes act out scenes. There's been many times when I've been sitting at my computer writing, and I have to even get up physically and act a particular scene. I like to put myself into it. And I needed a design for a spaceship. I knew what certain aspects I needed to have, but I asked my son to draw it, and then once he drew it, then I was able to work off of his drawing for the writing. So anyhow, that was a neat one. Then the other book I want to talk about today is The Space Between. Now, I wrote this for my son. In the back says, an ancient manuscript may hold the key to unlocking the secrets of reality itself. When a 19th century scientist tries to use that key, he unleashes a disaster he could never have imagined. His only hope for saving the world is to enter once again the space between. Now, this has a neat backstory. And again, I'm going to go to the end here and share some of the notes that I wrote him. So I said, all physical things are made up of tiny particles called atoms. And I explained how the word atom comes from a Greek word. It literally means something that cannot be cut. And this theory goes back to Democritus, a Greek philosopher living in the 5th century BC. Then I talked about the Roman poet Lucretius, who wrote a poem about atoms, or in part about atoms. So that's kind of forms the beginning of this, and then you'll see where this goes. And then I said, scroll ahead to 2013. I'd recently finished reading The Time Machine, and suddenly the idea for this book came together. It was to be a story with the feeling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the time machine. It needed to be set in the heyday of early scientific work in this country. So, what happens is the main character, a fellow named Dr. Lucretius Sims, paying homage to, or giving homage to Lucretius, the Roman poet. He takes seriously something he's read in Lucretius's poem. Lucretius had this interesting idea that atoms are just raining down in straight lines, a constant flow of atoms. Of course, we know this isn't true, but as I always tell my students, it's just an ingenious idea. And for reasons that Lucretius himself can't explain, atoms will swerve from time to time and connect with each other, and then that's how physical things are produced. Everything from your dog to the tree in your backyard. Now, Lucretius did not really believe in the Greco-Roman gods. And so what he did, he assigned them a place in his atomic structure. He said that the gods really had no causal effect in the world, but existed in the space between the atoms. So that's where the title of the book comes from, Space Between. So the main character, Dr. Lucretius Sims, invents a machine that allows him to separate or go into the flow of atoms and actually see what's going on there. Well, what happens is whatever he's thinking about at the time when he enters into the flow of atoms, that's then becomes reality. Those thoughts move the atoms within the rain of atoms. And so if he's thinking about dinosaurs, a dinosaur comes out. If he's thinking about soldiers, an army of soldiers comes out. And so they all start rampaging around Boston. In the 19th century. Now, the cool thing about this book, I always like to bring in real aspects. And there's a lot of historical references. There's references to the poetry of John Donne and the play and the movie Beckett. There's stuff like that. There's even stuff to references to Plato, of course Lucretius. And I love to do research when writing fiction. And I said, even though the story is fiction, touches of realism make it more believable. I said to my son, take for instance the references to Park Street Church and Silas Aiken in chapter 17. I did a bit of research to see what churches were in Boston in the time period of the story. And after deciding on Park Street Church, I checked to see who would have been the pastor at this time and found it was a man named Silas Aiken. So I like to bring in little details like that. Makes the fiction a little bit more believable. But the really cool part of the story had to do with the cover. So I said, finally, I want to share with you something exciting. I was able to email Leiden University, which is the city in the city of Leiden in the Netherlands. This university owns the oldest existing manuscript of Lucretius. It was written not long after the year AD 800. I asked them to send me an electronic copy of the page that includes the Latin text you read about in chapter 5. I had included part of the original Latin text there, and they did. I was really excited about this. And then I include the picture. I'll pull it up here so that you can see this as well. This is a picture of the oldest manuscript we have of the Roman poet the Roman poet Lucretius, and it is of the part of the poem where he talks about the space between the atoms, and it's the part that I quote in the story. So I love bringing in, like I say, realism, things of that nature. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, a little trip through a couple of the books that I've written. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.